today we're getting political, but hopefully not actually political, like angry, let's fight political. Hopefully more like, hey, this is a political issue that affects everybody. Let's talk about it and what the heck it is and be educated and informed kind of political. Does that exist? Anyway, so today we're talking specifically about gerrymandering, which is a completely insane word, but let's take things all the way back. Little baby review real quick. So the US government has the Senate, which has 2 senators per state no matter the population, and the House of Representatives, which quite literally represents the nation in terms of population. So each of these representatives represents, if you will, a congressional district. Some states have a gazillion, like California has 53 districts and therefore 53 representatives, and then a bunch just have 1 representative like Alaska and Delaware. Okay, so let's get into the representatives themselves in those pesky little districts. So every 10 years we have a census, which tells us the exact population, which tells us how many representatives each state gets. And as we said, each representative has a district, and each state determines its own boundaries of those districts, which gets sticky, but each one must be roughly equal in population, contiguous, and compact. That's pretty much all the federal government has to say about that, and it leaves it up to the individual states to determine standards for redistricting. Enter gerrymandering. How the heck did we get this word? I'll tell you. So in 1812, there was this politician named Elbridge Gerry, which is, well, it's Gary, not Jerry. If you watch Parks and Rec, this joke writes itself. Classic Jerry mix-up. I love it. So Elbridge Gerry approved this silly little bill that allowed for state legislatures to draw their own district, which resulted in districts shaped like this, which got cartoonified in the paper and thus referred to as a gerrymander. Get it? Like Gary, but also like salamander? Get it? You guys get it. What fun. So over time, gerrymander became gerrymander, except in Elbridge Gerry's hometown of Marblehead, Massachusetts, where they still say gerrymander. And I love that fact. They're like, listen, we knew Gary. It was 200 years ago, but we gotta keep up the name. So gerrymandering, or gerrymandering for you citizens of Marblehead, is when partisan-controlled state legislatures draw the district lines to favor one party. And let's talk about how this actually works, because it can be kind of confusing, and honestly, it doesn't seem like it should be able to work as well as it does. And let's use arbitrary colors. So let's say this is your state. Hypothetically, it's a 60-40 split between 2 parties. A perfectly proportional representation of this group of people would be 3 peach districts and 2 green districts. Proportional! But now let's say you redesign the districts to look like this. Suddenly we have 5 peach districts. Now let's say you did it like this. Now you have 2 peach districts and 3 green districts, and they can go on and on and on forever. There are some specific tactics to gerrymandering, namely cracking, which is where one voting group is broken up to dissipate their votes and overwhelm them with the other party's votes, and packing, which is where groups of similar voters are all packed together in as few districts as possible. To give a real example of this, Chicago is a largely Democratic urban center that has sort of slices of the city carved up with lots of rural Republican voters outside the city offsetting those Democratic votes. And if you're like, that seems like that would benefit the Republican Party and hurt the Democratic Party, you would be right, objectively. In 2010, there was a huge push by the Republican Party called Red Map, which involved funding and providing resources and new map drawing software, all to secure Republican-favored districts and therefore congressional seats. And the Republicans had a super successful 2010 year, reminder, a census year, which put them in control of a lot of state legislatures, ergo in charge of creating a lot of maps. So see how it's a whole thing where like if you win, you get to draw the maps, which benefit your party, which will favor and retain incumbent politicians, and then those people get to win again, and then they draw the maps, and then they win again, and then they draw the maps, and it's sort of one big winner-take-all vortex of victory forever. And before anybody comes at me, both parties do this. This was a massive Republican Party focus for the 2010 election. So for 2010 to 2020, the most gerrymandered states currently are the Republican-controlled states, but Democrats have definitely done this as well. So nobody's innocent, is what I'm saying. So how the heck do we fix this situation? A big focus of recent campaigns is to design districts for healthy competition between 2 parties where either party could feasibly win. I know this sounds like normal democracy, not a big deal, but right now out of 435 House elections, currently only about 61 are considered battleground contests that anybody could win. The other 374 have basically been designed to favor one political party for a predetermined victory, rendering opposing votes wasted even when the opposing party wins the popular vote. Which I know, sounds crazy, I agree. So let's get into a specific example. In 2012, in Wisconsin, Democratic candidates won more votes for assembly races statewide, but Republicans won 60% of the seats. Same thing in Pennsylvania, Democrats won 2.79 million votes compared to 2.71 million Republican votes, but Republicans won 13 seats compared to Democrats 5. North Carolina, same thing, as you can see, but Democrats won 4 seats compared to Republicans 9. So see what I mean? The democracy vibes, they're not strong. This thing has kind of hopped in and out of the Supreme Court, and really 2 things have been decided for sure. 1, you can't redistrict to intentionally hurt minority groups, and 2, in order for judges to evaluate claims of partisan gerrymandering, they would need a limited and precise standard that would be clear, manageable, and politically neutral. But no one has proposed one, they said. So they're like, we agree, it's not cool, but we need a yardstick. What's a Supreme Court judge to do? Speaking of that percentage, there is one measure that actually has a whole name and everything. It's referred to as the efficiency gap, or basically how many votes are wasted voting for a candidate who is pretty much definitely predetermined to lose. Sorry, bud. So super skewed and gerrymandered districts have a really high efficiency gap, more competitive districts have a lower one, and creating districts with a super high efficiency gap is also dangerous because it fosters politicians who are more extreme and one-sided and not incentivized to reach across the aisle because their entire district is on one side of the aisle. And then we have a whole House of Representatives who won't work together and everybody's mad. Nothing gets done. So how the heck do we fix it? Great question. Probably the leading and favorite idea right now is to charge independent citizen commissions with the drawing of district lines. This has happened in 8 states. Some love it, some hate it, but at the end of the day, it takes decision-making power back from politicians and into the hands of the people, which we like. Yay, democracy. To end with a quote, which I never really do, but feels right, Thomas Jefferson said, "The will of the people is the only legitimate foundation of any government, and to protect its free expression should be our first object." So that's gerrymandering. It's messy, it's complicated, but it's something we can tackle all together. See you next week for a history of American barbecue!